My name is David Parker, and I'm the founder of Wishplay. And I'm going to start this out, and I'm really excited because, first of all, I want to thank everybody here for being in the public sector. I've now been in healthcare for 7 years, and it's a massive difference, and there's a lot more passion, and it's people like you that are actually making a huge difference. And so I have a question. I usually actually ask you, does data make you happy? And that's what I usually do, but I know data makes you happy, so I'm not going to ask that. I'm going to ask, does data make your users happy? And I'm not talking about what the inference is. I'm not talking about what it can mean. And I'm not talking about how beautiful it can be, because it can be really beautiful. And I'm definitely not talking about this dude. I'm actually talking about the collection and storage of data. Does that make you happy? And does that make your users happy? And I get to tell you, and I'm going to show you how I get to make patients happy from this. And not only am I able to do that, it actually improves their quality of life. And I'm also going to show you how we were able to create an AI digital avatar. And by this, I'm not just talking about a chatbot or something like that. I'm actually talking about cloning someone. We're actually able to clone the patient using AI. And I know we're in the Wild West of data, like in artificial intelligence. And I know that there's a couple of examples where this can go wrong. Right? So then the question becomes, is it possible to build artificial intelligence that's safe, that's reliable, and doesn't try to take over the world?
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
But I'm happy to tell Hal that he's wrong, that we can actually do that. I'm going to show you how to do that. But before I do that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about me and my past. You see, for the last 7 years, I've been working within hospitals and hospices, and I've been using virtual reality to grant last wishes for these patients. Before that, I was actually a systems architect, and so I was working for telco, big banks, that kind of thing. And I was doing like Minority Report kind of stuff, right? I was doing biometrics, artificial intelligence, empathy analysis, like kind of really kind of cool stuff. And I have like an amazing family, 2 great kids. Everything is phenomenal, but I'm not happy. I'm actually depressed, and I don't know why. Right? And so, and I figured it out. Is like I was using my powers for the dark side. I wasn't doing anything. And
ew, no, David.
No, I know. And the worst thing is that I wasn't doing anything that my girls could look up to me for. I wasn't doing anything I was proud of, and they weren't looking up to me. And so what I did is I started to volunteer. I started to volunteer at Bridgepoint in Mount Sinai here in Toronto. And what I would do is I would actually use virtual reality to grant last wishes. Right? So people who can't go places, they can't do things, they have a bucket list, they want to be able to use virtual reality, and that's what I did, is I was able to get them to see this last wish. And I mean, and it was magical, right? You have the usual suspects, right? So, Great Wall of China, the Northern Lights, for kids, gotta be Disney, right? And then I found out later on that for boys, they want to blow shit up, and for girls, they wanted to fly, and I thought that was amazing, right? And there were some other ones, right? So I want you to scream out me. This is a trick question, but I want you to scream out me. What do you think those are? What do you think those are? Wait, so then, yeah, right? So no. They're ski poles.
I'm doing okay.
Right, so I was able to actually start to use these things. And I was trying to figure out how to do this in a different way. And probably my most favorite one was with Emily's House. Emily's House is a children's hospice here in Toronto. And what we did is 2 weeks before Halloween, we dressed up a whole street. And we actually dressed up the kids, and we went trick-or-treating. And I filmed them going door to door, trick-or-treating. And then on Halloween day, we were actually able to then put the kids, and some of these kids have never been trick-or-treating before. Right? And so they were actually able to go trick-or-treating for the first time. And then when they took down the headset, that same bag that we had in the video was waiting for them with a candy inside so that they can actually do it. And I mean, look at that face. Like that's pure enjoyment. It also might be pure sugar, but it's really fun. Like they had a great time. And then I started to realize that there was actually a second wish. There was a second wish that people actually just wanted to be remembered. Right, so I was trying to figure out, and the first time this happened was with Carl here, and I was able to take him out east on the virtual reality, but he came to me and I asked him, like, what's the matter? And he said, my real wish is I've got 2 girls under 2, and they'll never remember me. And I'm like, oh my God. And so, I went and I grabbed my camera, and I filmed him, and we asked questions for 2 days about his life, right? And we asked, those factual questions. I was born on, I worked on at these jobs, dates, anything you could find almost like on a Wikipedia page. But then there was like the knowledgeable questions. The knowledgeable questions is he loved the first snowfall. Didn't know why, just loved it. When he was 14, he stole a car with his, with a friend. And I'm like, I probably didn't know that. But I did need to know that because this was who he was. And so I had to take all this data, and I had to then start to edit it, and I had to then start putting it in a way that would actually be useful for him. And there was a problem with this, is that it's really hard because, he's kind of become a friend now, and I had to sit there and edit all of this stuff. And there was this one thing where he was singing a song, and it's a song that they sing to their kids every single night before they went to bed, and it's a family song. And his voice catches, and he's singing it, and I'm trying to edit this, and I just start to bawl. And my wife's like, you gotta stop. And I'm like, I can't stop, because if I don't continue on, I won't be able to finish. And so I finished through, and I powered through, and I was able to do it, and I was able to put it in such a way that it was searchable and videos, and so it became sort of the data, his memories became the data. And I was able to hand it off to him, and then this massive smile from him, because that was his wish. It wasn't to go out east, it was actually to make sure that his daughters were able to remember him, and he got that. And unfortunately, he did pass away soon afterwards. But then that's when I realized, then the real work began, right? I needed to refine the questions. It's really hard. You can't just walk up to someone and say, tell me about your life. You need to come up with a process. You need to be able to actually then segment it and then be able to collect that data so that it becomes meaningful. And so that's what I did, is I actually then, you don't do it in a silo, you work with teams, and so I worked with the doctors, and I worked with psychiatrists and therapists. I even worked with writers and biographers to be able to then not just be able to collect the data, but actually ask the right questions to get the data. And so we came up with the life questions, and these questions actually then went through each stage of your life. But it was also adaptable. Someone who is just about to pass away, someone who doesn't have a long time, we ask them different questions than someone who has a little bit more time, right? But it's more than that. Is if that person didn't get along with their family, stop asking them questions about family vacations. It has to be this way. So we were able to do that. And then I needed to make it so that it wasn't virtual. And so we were able to do it so that it then became just on the phone. So you can ask these questions on the phone, and it was a game changer. So this allowed then for patients in hospitals and hospices to either themselves, family members, or employees to capture their life and to create this data that is usable by generations to come so that they get to know who that person was, right? And then I met this guy. This is Chris. Chris was he was rambunctious. He had ADHD more than I did. And he was actually all over the place. And he loved skateboarding and he loved art. But the thing that he loved more than anything else was his brother. You see, when they were young, the father took off. And so it was kind of up to Chris to look after Tommy. It was up to Chris to teach Tommy. And Tommy relied on Chris for advice and everything like that. And so when Chris found out that his condition wasn't operable, when he found out, you would think that he's worrying about himself, but no, he starts to worry about his brother Tommy, and he's worried about who's Tommy now going to be able to talk to, right? He's young. Think about it. Sex, there's drinking, there's all these things. How do we have this conversation? And so I was like, okay. Right, so what I thought of is can we clone him? Is there ability to actually do something where to do this? And so I had seen this thing with ChatGPT, and they were able to then start to be able to kind of mimic people, and so I looked at that, and then I found a sort of a good source to be able to try that, and I needed to test it out. Obviously, you don't test it out right away with patients. Even before piloting, even before a proof of concept, you kind of just want to get a feel for it. And so I tested it with my daughter. And this had absolutely nothing to do with the fact that she had a science project coming up. I didn't choose her because of that, obviously, no. And she did very well on that, by the way. That was really good. So we tested it out. And so it tells you to take emails, and it takes some text messages and social posts and videos, and we dumped it all in, and was able to then come up with a sort of this chat bot. But there was a problem with it, right? So I was able to answer questions and stuff, but it was lifeless. It wasn't her. It was just yeah, that's not right. And so then we asked the life questions, and she doesn't have all the stages, but we were able to ask as many as we could, and we put that in. And that was magical. I mean, it was insane how different it was. She talked about when she was young. She talked about stories. I had logged in. We were using OpenAI and ChatGPT, and so I had logged in using my account, and so she kept on calling me David. And I was like, no. At one point, I was like, Audrey, you know it's your dad, right? And she's like, Daddy? And then she tells me a story about when she was young with me. And being the stoic guy, it didn't affect me at all. Like, I was so stoic through that whole thing. So now I'm going to try a demo. I'm going to try to do this on stage here. And I tried it out yesterday, and it worked out fine. And I've gone back and forth and made sure it worked. But there's some people better than me that have gone on and done demos on stage that didn't go so well. So I'm just going to preference that this might not go as well as I really, really want it to. But we're going to try it out, okay? Oh, I need to turn that on.
How can we spread kindness and make the world a better place together?
Hey there, sweetie pie. It's Daddy. Listen, I'm really, really missing you. Could you tell me about a time when you were young? Can you tell me about your a favorite memory?
Hey Dad, I miss you too. One of my favorite memories is when we went to that big park and had a picnic. Remember how we played Frisbee and Desmond almost ran off with it? It was hilarious. We ended up just sitting on the blanket, laughing and watching the clouds. Good times.
Hey, listen, sweetie, I'm a little nervous. I have to give a presentation in front of a whole bunch of people, and I'm a little nervous. So, do you have any advice?
Hey Dad, I totally get it. Presentations can be nerve-wracking. Remember how you always said it's not just about what you say, but how you say it. Channel that energy. Imagine you're just telling me or Mom a story. And hey, maybe sneak in a joke. You've got this.
Thanks, little girl. Hey, listen, little fish, I gotta go, but I just wanted to let you know that I love you and I miss you so much.
Love you too, Dad. I miss you tons. Can't wait to catch up again soon. Take care, okay?
Love you, bye-bye. I think that went really well, right? That's not bad. So, I almost still did the whole conference thing and then fallen. And they would have had it on video, which would have been great. So as you can see, I think I've got enough data. I think I can actually do this, that I can actually then create a Chris. And so what I did is I was a little worried, so I actually then took it to some really good friends of mine, the former colleagues that have started a development shop, and I asked them, look, what do you think? What can we do with this? And so, of course, the first thing that they said was, have you seen Black Mirror? Do you not understand where this can go? And I'm like, okay, right, I understood. So first, obviously, the first thing that we need to do is, create a kill switch right off the bat. So, okay, check. But one of the things that they were most worried about was actually the AI models, right? So we have to make sure that the AI models are updated all the time. And in 200 years from now, to make sure that these AI models are relevant, right? So we have to then make sure that we can teach them what the new things are so people can actually talk to them about these new things. And so we always have to then keep on updating it. And we have to get that from outside sources, right? And the worry is that because these are memories, are we going to be then muddying or making these memories kind of blurry? So we needed to do something about that, right? And if anything, I kind of some examples of other companies who have done this. It hasn't gone so well, and so we created a time machine, right? So we can always go back and then test to see, how it is. Are they still able to respond? Are the memories intact? So we were able to do that, but and by clipping the timeline, that will actually go forward then, right? So we're able to, and again, there's problems with that as well, and we're trying to take care of that. But the thing is that we also needed to make it so that we can create new memories. And so then what we needed to do is we need to come up with a way to be able to check the information that's going in and only allow the information going in that we wanted to have, okay? And so then to do that, what we did is that the Huru guys, my friends, they actually already had a system that we were able to then use. And one of the things that you could do is create functions. Now, this is something that's outside of ChatGPT. This is actually something that you can upload some files, and it would use those files to create these types of functions, right? And so we used the UN Code of Conduct, the EU Artificial Intelligence Act. We were able to, there's a good friend of mine that does DE and I governance. So we were able to use that, and that became the check to make sure that the memories were always going to be good, but also that anything that we were doing was ethically and based upon empathy. And so hopefully, the AI overlords won't actually be created, at least through me. And then the engineers came to me, and they were super excited. They were like, look, we built this on JavaScript and Kubernetes. And so what that means is that we're going to be able to do, inject and train. It's not just being able to upload files, we're actually able to use some of these things to inject and train the models. And I'm like, okay, can you give me some examples? And they did. And it was amazing. It quickly showed that they did not take the presentation that was yesterday about storytelling. It was super confusing. I had no idea what the hell they were talking about. So instead of doing that, I'm going to tell you sort of a real life example. This is Kevin Weingartner, Dr. Kevin Weingartner, and he is a palliative doctor at Sick Kids. And so when I first told him about this idea, and I kid you not, he said, have you seen the Black Mirror episode with? And I'm like, yes, I've seen the Black Mirror episode with that. But then he's like, this is a horrible idea. This is awful. We don't like this at all. And I'm like, why not? And he's like, well, we already have a problem with the grieving process. We already have problems with parents that don't pay attention to the sibling. We already have problems with parents then getting addicted to videos, whatever have you. And this is going to be even worse for addiction, right? So you can actually then have a conversation. So that's not good at all. And we're completely, the grieving process is all over the place, but we are still interrupting that grieving process. And so I was like, okay, Kevin, can you do me a favor? Can you please give me the sources that you have for the grieving process? And so he was like, these are the top 3 that we use on a constant basis. And so I was able to then use those, and we were able to input those into the solution. And what it did is that then we created functions out of it, right? And so the functions then became, well, you're no longer able to just sit there and be in it all the time. And actually, it would give you, it starts with 15 minutes, and then based upon how you're answering and what it actually, your answers are, will actually then update that. So as you go longer and longer through the grieving process, the time becomes longer and longer. It gives guided responses. One of the reasons why I asked about, giving a conference, and I was a little nervous, and her telling me how to do that, we can actually use them to guide you through the grieving process now. Have you tried? Just remember to, right? We can actually do that, which is huge. And then the last one is like suggestions. So, Audrey told about when they were young and sitting on a blanket. Well, imagine then she says the same thing and then says, why don't you take Ingrid out and do it today? Right? So that whole sibling neglect thing, well, we can actually help with those things. So we can actually now use this not just as a tool to be able to then be remembered by, we can actually help it for family members to get through that grieving process. And the assistance one is a really cool thing. So this is what I actually was very excited about, even more so, is the assistance. We can create multiple assistants. So that means that we can actually create different people all the time, and we can actually then put their voices to it, and this becomes huge, right? So what happens is that, think about David here who had Parkinson's, or we've got Terry who had Alzheimer's, and my friend Cecile here, and she's just been diagnosed with MS. So if you've got a life-altering diagnosis, and you know that you're not going to be able to communicate, well, what we're able to do is we're actually able to put you through those life questions, and then we also capture daily information from them on the choices that they're making, the things that they'd like to do on a daily basis, almost like a journal. And then when they no longer can communicate, the app can do it for them. Right? So they're trying to order at a restaurant. Well, we can scan the menu, and we know their preferences. Right? So the clothing choices, their vacation things, all of those things now we're able to capture. And this is again, it's a lifeline. So they can say yes or no. If it's not right, then they can actually say no, that wasn't right. But this is massive for people to be able to do it. My favorite example of the different assistants is Celia here, and she was neurodivergent, and the problem was that she wouldn't talk to anybody. She wouldn't talk to doctors. She wouldn't talk to her, like she wouldn't even talk to her family. And so when you're trying to, like I wanted to know what her wish was, but that's like nothing compared to how are you feeling? Like, are you hurting? Right? There's all these things and she wouldn't say anything. But you know who she would have talked to right off the bat? Captain Marvel. Right? So she would have actually talked, she would have opened up. Right? So we can actually create different assistants depending upon what the model is. And then tailor the actual personality for what we need. Right? So this is massive, and I'm sure that you can think of a ton of different things within your environment that you can use that, right? Think about that one employee, we all know that keeps on asking the same damn questions all the time, or they always go to the HR to ask questions, and yet there's a ton of information online. They could have just even searched it, and yet, well, give them a digital person to talk to, and it will answer them, right? So, and the other cool thing is that, think about all the times that people come to you and they're like, okay, we need an AI model, or you know what, we've got to have a Power BI to do certain things. And imagine if you had a digital avatar that can actually answer those questions, so that they're not bothering you with these things, right? So they can be like a go-between, and then only when it can't answer these things, it will actually then filter to you, right? So, and this is just off the top of my head, there are so many things that this can actually be used for. So the other thing is that this is the public sector. You have data. You've got mountains and mountains of sexy data. It needs and we've learned this over the last couple of days, and we all know that yes, it's got to be formulated. We've got to be able to do stuff with it, but you do have it, right? And you have policies. You have policies that go back, and history of policies, and then you have training, right? So we can use all of these things. We can actually use that to inject it. But my God, you actually even have training on policies, right? It's you have to train on how to do the policies, and then you've got policies on how to train, right? This is awesome. You guys have all this different, information that we can then use that. And so then if you figure out what those pain points are, and we can actually then use that to be able to create, and my suggestion is to do is to make sure that you also know who your audience is. And it's not just okay, these are going to be the users, but what's the intended goal? Right? What do they want to be able to do at the end of it? It doesn't matter about the data, it doesn't matter about the systems, what is it that they want to be able to do? And we want to be able to match that, right? And then you do a pilot, right? And I know that some people call it a proof of concept, but the proof of concept slide didn't look nearly as cool as this one, so I called it a pilot. Do a pilot, test it out, come up with ideas, be able to we've heard here, fail fast. You need to be able to test these things, and test them in different ways to be able to do it. And my favorite, a favor that I would ask is, if you need help doing this, please reach out to me, and I will put you in touch with the Huru people, because they're actually doing all of this for me pro bono because they believe in what I'm doing, and so I really want to be able to help them back. But I want to also make sure that if you need help in doing this, or be able to present these things, I'm happy to do that. But most importantly, make sure what you're doing is for the right reasons. Make sure that you're not using your powers for the dark side. Make sure that you can be proud of what you're doing, right? And I'll tell you, if you do that, you're going to create a ton of these. And there's no better feeling in the world. It's the best feeling. Thank you.
Conference, but thanks for the almost tears, David. I open up the floor for questions. No, there are Kleenexes in the back if anybody needs it. I need to make a run. Yeah. I think we have a mic runner just coming up, yeah.
I can be a mic runner. Mic runner. There's a little switch on the side there.
There
you go.
Yeah, very impressive. I have a son with special needs who is nonverbal. So how would be, so it gets frustrated. We do understand him most of the time, but not always. People outside the family, hardly. So how hard that would be to use like some of your apps or to make some apps to translate his voice, his words into something that everybody understands.
Yeah, so I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, but it is possible. And again, it's actually going to be very much of a team thing and a family thing. You know the different sounds. So one of the things that we can do is we can actually then record the different sounds, and then it's up to you to then so that we can then match them. But the thing is, they're not always that way, right? And so there's inclination, speed, those kind of things. So we can match that. And then the other side of it too is right, being able to then match from the other side, which is if you're able to tell us what the likes and dislikes are, if you're able to the habits and those kind of things, and then you use it to be able to then say show X, show Y, and then you're able to then like did you want a bath, and then show. So there's a visual thing, and then see if it's a back and forth. So I mean, I think it's a phenomenal use case to be able to do those things, and I've actually had it before where we actually had a gentleman that was nonverbal, and this was just for the the legacy taking thing. It's like, how do you then capture someone who he had dementia and was no longer. So we were actually able to use past videos for his voice, and then we used friends and family to be able to then come up with the different stories and those kind of things, and we were able to then generate something that was able to then go back and forth and then be able to create a legacy for the person. So it is possible. It's a little bit harder, and yeah, exactly, yeah. Any other questions?
This one right here.
You got this one. I'm not running.
Okay, so David, this is an amazing work. I really appreciate it. So here I have a question, because whenever we're handling with the data, that is health of the people, the data is obviously sensitive. So even while including new features, or as you told, as you mentioned that you're working with the Hoodoo people. So how are you handling data, or while sharing with them, or what are the data security measures that you're following?
So it's actually really cool. So I mean, we're following the healthcare model. So we being part of Sinai Health Systems, UHN, those kind of things, and making sure that the data is within Canadian data centers, and then using normal encryptions and those kind of things, being able to do that. But the thing is that the problem we have is that we can only not even like a lot of people here are planning, and I've talked to quite a few people here, and they're talking about not just now, they're talking about in 5 years, they're talking about in 10 years, which is great. But the thing is that I got to think about what happens in 100 years, what happens in like 200 years, and so do we always want to keep on updating the systems, or do we want to then try to figure out, can we actually then create systems now that might be able to handle that? And so one of the ideation systems, the ideation sessions that we had, we were trying to figure out, like, how do we make sure that there is a something like an encryption, but that quantum computers won't be able to hammer through, right? And so then we have to be able to start introducing new things. And so the thing that we're trying to figure out, and what we came up with, is there's a live feed of a pond or water. And so it's always moving. And so then what we do is we actually then create a randomized, a minimum of 5 spots that it actually then locates on that feed, and then it takes that and averages out the lightness darkness. And that then becomes the key to be able to then use for the system, and then we are able to then go back and then be able to get that one point in time to be able to do it. So the problem with that is that if we completely corrupt all the data, that means that it's always checking, and it's massive amounts of resources. So we're trying to figure out, is there a way to be able to do that where we're still using that as the key, but we're able to do it in a way that doesn't require us to having to completely corrupt it? Because the last thing you want to be able to do is like in 50 years from now, seeing your mum up on a billboard because the data's been scraped, right? So we have to make sure. So we're trying to figure out that balance, and we have been able to figure out, but it's really intensive, right? So again, so then what the question is like, that's why events like this are so important, is that I'm now searching. I'm talking to everyone here, like, how would you solve for that, right? We've solved for part of it. How do we do it so that it's not as intensive? How do we do it so that we can use something of nature so that it can't be replicated as the key, but allows us to be able to then save it and not have to then worry about that later on? Yeah, great question though. Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question, maybe? I think we're out of time. But David will be around. We'll bother you.
For lunch, yes.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
I think up next we have a joint discussion. Please welcome Carol and Rahul.